Yo, Billy, you know what's awesome?
What's that, man?
John Hughes films. Yeah!
Oh yeah. All right. So let's start with a bit of a disclaimer in that if we were to talk about all the John Hughes films that we think are awesome, we'd have it was literally have to be like a 4 or 5 episode series. So because some of these movies can be a whole show, and then some of these movies have sequels that John Hughes also worked on. So
Right.
it could be days. So we're going to focus on a couple and probably talk about a few others. But it wasn't until I sat down a little while ago and just looked at the timeline of John Hughes's career,
Yeah.
and I don't think that guy ever slept.
Yeah.
Like there's no way, because some directors, writers, producers do one role, maybe as a director, maybe as a writer, and they put out one movie every couple of years. And John Hughes was doing three,
Yeah.
and these were all big movies, like studio greenlit, big budget, high paid actors, and just rolling.
Yeah.
And he was doing three, sometimes four movies a year, and for like 10 or 12 years, easy.
Yeah.
And it basically, whenever you think of the '80s nostalgia that we really kind of have when it comes to movies and music, a lot of it was created directly by him because he was writing them too.
Absolutely.
So,
We talked about how Carpenter in the last episode had his pulse on everything that was going on. Man, John Hughes was nailing the teenage life in the 80s because, you can run the gambit with all of them and you can just cherry pick all the stuff that is 100% iconic. Um, I'm sure we'll talk about different ones on different shows, but just think about the imagery that we have because of Breakfast Club, right? The
hmm
iconic poster, right, that we've seen ripped off and used for horror movies that we love.
oh yeah.
The scene of Judd Nelson walking out at the end, holding his hand up with Simple Minds playing. I mean, these are iconic '80s scenes, and that's just one movie. I mean, you can
hmm
you can name off every one of them, and there's visual things that just automatically pop up in your head. And I think in passing, we were talking about the idea of doing a show like this, and you and I both unanimously just said what our favorite ones were, and they were exactly the same ones.
Yeah. Totally. Well, too, and before we announce what we're talking about, but like a lot of times because they were so iconic, but John Hughes is really well known for two movies, which is our 16 Candles and
Yep.
Pretty in Pink, which he was very much enamored with Molly Ringwald, and she was in The Breakfast Club, and
Yep.
and so you got those two that are kind of almost, I don't want to say they're like girly movies because they're still you know teenage movies.
Right.
It's just the main protagonist is a girl, but so sometimes you kind of get lost in that weird '80s thing, like you mentioned, like this is how kids dressed in the '80s, but in reality, no, we wore whatever mom bought at Kmart. That's what we wore.
Exactly.
Like nobody's walking around as mods. Um,
Uh, yeah,
but when it comes to John Hughes,
disclaimer, real quick though, 16 Candles is awesome.
oh yeah, oh big time, big time, big time. So it's Pretty in Pink.
Yeah, it's great too.
I mean, and that psychedelic Ferris song is just
Isn't
just that
she?
perfect. Oh man, I've always loved that. That voice is just so killer, like he's it's but we were like, hey, let's do John Hughes, and I was like, that umbrella's a little big.
Yeah,
To maybe
it
narrow it
is.
down a little bit.
Yeah.
And like, okay, what are your favorites? And the first of the favorites was Weird Science.
Oh yeah. Yep.
And like you say, when it comes to iconic
Yeah.
films of the '80s, Weird Science it's certainly in the top 10, if not in the top 5. And we're talking alongside movies like Ghostbusters, of
Yeah.
just absolutely quintessential 80s movies that you
Yep.
have to see because this defines the decade in entertainment.
Yep.
It's just awesome. There's so many memorable scenes. And it's such a crazy movie. But that night after we got off the phone, I went and watched it again, just front to back, just to refresh. And I found myself just cracking. I was laughing the whole time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like it's so good. There's so many scenes in that film that just make no sense, that are unexpected, which I think is kind of a theme that we're kind of coming up on with a lot of the movies we're watching. It's just like, did you realize that this movie had a straight narrative from beginning to end, but somehow, some way in the middle, they decided to drop a Polaris missile right in the middle of the house? Like,
not to mention a motorcycle gang from the Road Warriors.
right?
And that's the beauty of it. And I think that, I always use the example of RoboCop. Like, if somebody asks me what the 80s is, I almost have to just hand them a copy of RoboCop, right? But really, there's 3 movies, and it's the 2 that we're talking about here today, because I think Weird Science is the 80s in a nutshell, right? It was the age of starting to use computers, the wonderment of being a young teen boy in the 80s, being a nerd. Hey, let's face it, most of us were nerds, and come on. I mean, Kelly LeBrock. I mean, come on. You have to stand up and salute.
Absolutely. Which I think is funny because the pictures that they're pulling out of the magazines and feeding into the computer,
Yeah.
they're pictures of Kelly
Yeah,
LeBrock,
absolutely.
which makes you know that Kelly LeBrock actually exists in that universe,
Yeah.
and Lisa's just a doppelganger.
Right.
Because Kelly LeBrock was a famous model,
Absolutely.
and they're pulling pictures of her out of the magazines,
Yep.
and probably like the real pictures of like whatever she was promoting,
Hey.
like Revlon or something.
Well,
like,
remember, she did the commercial. Remember, "Don't Hate Me Because I'm Beautiful." She's doing the
Oh, yeah.
the shampoo and all that stuff.
My
back in the
dad,
day,
my
so.
dad used to love that commercial.
Well, of course he
just,
did.
He just no. Well, I mean, he just probably not just because she was hot, but just because like got on my mom's nerves. But she'd say, "Don't hate me because I'm beautiful," and he'd be like, "Oh, no, Kelly, no one could hate you, not even for that."
Oh, yeah, I bet that drove her insane. It's funny because I remember my mom one time talking about she went and seen 10 when it came out, Bo Derek.
Mhm.
And I saw a commercial for it. And this is when I'm still a kid. And I said, wow, I've never seen that movie. Mom said, I saw it in the theater. She said, it was embarrassing.
I can imagine certain movies. You're there with a whole bunch of strangers.
Just the fact of, it's Bo Derek on the screen, in slow mo. And yeah, that's that can put a damper on things in your real life.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, Weird Science. I mean, come on, with Chet, brother Chet,
Mm-hmm.
Bill Paxton.
Just the opening scene of the Oingo Boingo song.
Yeah,
Just coming in and it's kind of like in Smokey and the Bandit. The lyrics pretty much tell you what's going to happen.
right.
It's like, it's like it's my creation. Is it real? That kind of thing. And just sets the tone for this. Because Oingo Boingo is weird.
Oh, yeah.
They're a weird band. And it sets the tone for this weird movie. That's
Yep.
it's not any less great because it's weird, but like you say, it's like the time when computers could do anything.
Yeah.
Back before they actually could do everything, they couldn't really do much of anything at all.
Right. But the possibilities, you had that 80s mentality of, man, you can do. I mean, they broke into the military computer system to do this, right?
Uh-huh. Yeah. And that was the thing. It was like they're just and that was another thing. It was like with hackers.
Yeah.
It's like nerds and hackers, and people can just do things with computers that normal people can't do, because they're just hanging around bored, being bored nerds.
Yeah.
And Gary's like, we should create a woman, and it's like, it's not the fact that it's not possible. It's just the fact that we're going to get in trouble if we do this.
Right.
There's just different, like they set out, they had a plan. They knew what they could do to make it work, and they were just kind of they were with the bras on their heads and stuff. Like there's a ceremony to this whole thing.
Yeah.
But
Hilarious.
I love how Iron Man,
Yeah.
Robert Downey
Jr. Yeah.
is cast as Robert Downey in this movie.
Yep.
And he plays a bad guy.
Yeah, he does.
Which, he's not really a bad guy. He's just the preppy, popular kid. But he's a bad guy.
His buddy was also in Nightmare on Elm Street 2. Right? Mm-hmm. He was also in Vamp. So, he's one of those guys you said, oh, man, that's the dude from Weird Science. Mm-hmm. And those two together, they work great, man. They're great. I can't say that I didn't model a few things in my life after those guys.
It's just so crazy because that was one thing that was that in a lot of John Hughes movies was that you have to wonder or know or whatever that Hughes himself had to have been a nerd.
Yeah.
And because I remember when I was a kid, junior high, and the popular kids, the football players, it's like they seemed old to me. We were the same age, or maybe they were like a year older, but they had, they had a gleam in their eye. They had just a kind of a swagger about them, or they seemed just light years ahead of the rest of us. And then we're all over here in our with our trapper keepers and stuff. And like what sets those kids apart? What makes them that much? And so you see that in a lot of John Hughes is like the popular kids being played by a 27-year-old, whereas the teenagers are actually being played by real teenagers because they were 16 and 17 in Weird Science.
Yeah.
So that's the age of these kids, and Kelly LeBrock was 25.
Whew.
So that must have been a fun movie to shoot.
And just the fact of, there's so many scenes, and like you said, it's just, you're gonna laugh. The scene where, they go back to his house and he meets the parents, and she's talking about him tossing off in the bathroom to magazines.
Mom, no!
I never toss off.
I've never tossed. He's like moving his head. I never tossed off.
Because she's saying that, no, we're going to have a party and he's going and there's not a thing you're going to do about it. There's just so much. The grandparents being frozen and putting in the closet.
There's nothing more important to a teenage boy than his grandparents. Like, of course, that's exactly what these kids are thinking of.
It's just, I don't know, man. It's that perfect sense of how crazy the 80s throw caution to the wind kind of mindset was, man. This movie really reflects that. And, it was about trying to be popular, being hip. And if you get one girl that's out of most girls' league to even look at
and
you,
the other girls won.
Then that was the goal, right? Why do you think these nerds, you even see it now, where they'll ask a famous model or Taylor Swift or somebody to go with them to prom, and they do. Mm-hmm. It's life-changing, right?
Yeah, and absolutely, and it puts that whole popularity thing into perspective.
Yeah,
because
there's a period in every guy's life that's kind of that thing that you want to accomplish, right? You want the girls to take a second glance at you, and for people like me, it just didn't happen.
Well, it's crazy because I read that Iron Maiden.
Yeah. Bruce Dickinson.
Not Iron Maiden, but Bruce Dickinson autobiography, which was good because he's just no nonsense, total business. But one of the things that I liked about the book was also one of the things I didn't like was that there was not a whole lot of personality and decadence and discussion about relationships within the band and stuff.
Yeah.
So of course then I just went the whole other direction, and so now I'm reading The Dirt by Motley Crue. And man, you talk about
the other direction.
Completely the other direction. But it's funny because if you're reading everybody, and like Nikki Sixx, he's just like, it's like I approach life, it's a war, and Mick Mars is just like, I just strive for musical perfection, And
Tommy Lee's
Vince
like,
Neil
I'm
is
just
like,
partying, dude.
yeah. Well, no, it was Vince Neil's just kind of like he, well, he's just a pretty boy,
Yeah.
and he could just get away with it. And then you got Tommy Lee, and he's just like, I'm just in it for the chicks, dude. Like that period. Like, like he's just a big, and like there was even a critical in the book. There's like actually one of their first critical reviews, and it's like the drummer just looks like an overexcited kid. Like he's just back there, just like he's really good. He's really good at playing, but he just doesn't look like he belongs with this band of like angry misfits, and he's just back there banging along. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
He just wanted the chicks, man.
That's right.
I'll be in Motley Crue.
Hey, many a nerd ended up being in metal bands.
Yep.
Guess what? That's still where you don't get the chicks.
Right? Well, they did.
Well, they did.
LA in the early 80s was a whole different monster.
Yeah, that's true. That's absolutely true.
But let's get back to Weird Science. So they broke in, the sky turns red, like destroys everything, and then out comes Kelly LeBrock, and she's going to teach them how to be cool.
Yeah.
And so the first thing she does is take them to a blues bar.
Yeah.
Where like the next youngest person in there is like 50. And it's a black blues bar, so whenever they walk in, the record literally scratches.
Yeah.
And yet they end up making friends with everybody.
Yeah.
And sitting there and telling the wild stories about how
that girl broke my heart in two.
It broke my heart in two. Kick me in the nuts.
Oh, in the family jewels.
Oh man. And then later, the same guys are the one dude's the bartender at the party.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome.
When old Robert Downey Jr. says, give me a scotch, and he says on the rocks, and he's like, why don't you just give me the bottle? He's like, how about I take this bottle and shove it up your ass? He's like, on the rocks.
On the rocks, it is. It's fantastic, man.
These kids used to bossing people around, starting to figure out how sometimes that doesn't work.
Yeah, man. Yeah, it's and it's all for just trying to get close to these other two regular high school girls,
who even though their boyfriends are like, they're even like, why do we hang out with these guys? They're such jerks.
Yeah.
And, like that's a real thing, kind of trapped in that cult of personality there that, if you're not dating the popular guy, then you're going to not be invited to all the social events and stuff.
Even if you don't really like them, you feel like this is where you're supposed to be because it's that status thing. And, and that's the reason you still see people, I'm not just saying ladies, but guys too, but they date or end up with people that treat them like crap because that's all they really know. The girls always talk about wanting a bad guy till you're married to one for a while and you find out he's a bad guy.
Yeah, exactly.
So, that appeal of, trying to, I don't know, tame the lion, I guess would be the phrase to use, but you're just asking for it. So, yeah.
Yeah, because there's no incentive for the guy to change because he's got the hot girlfriend and everybody lets him do what he wants to do.
Yep.
So he's just kind of like, what?
Yeah, I'm just doing what I do, bro.
Yep.
So, but yeah, man, this movie, like I said, just it nails that mentality as well as he nails 16 Candles, Breakfast Club with the difference in those people. I was telling my wife the other day because they're showing Breakfast Club again in the theaters around here. I said, when you think about that movie, it is still so relevant today because you still have the jock, you still got, the gothic kid, you've got the nerd, you've got the prissy little teen girl that's got, comes from a wealthy family. I said, that's still the makeup of what you have now. So that's the reason the movie still does what it does. And you're an anarchist, the Judd Nelson character. So yeah, I mean, you still have that makeup. That's still where we're at.
Well, and I think society is built of that. It's just at a certain point you have to go to work and work.
Yeah.
you can't pick on the funny looking dude at work because he may be your boss.
That's right.
He'll go to HR and get you fired. Like there's a certain hierarchy in real life that, and school itself is kind of a fake. It's a fake social structure.
Yeah, it is
in and of itself.
Yeah.
People haven't been going to in-person school for very long. And if you even look at the way that school is structured, even now, and it's kind of funny because this is not in any way to go political, but it's one of those things that I was listening to a political podcast one time that was talking about like the way that schools and like basically what he was talking about is that higher education right now is facing a collapse, right? Because of the student loan bubble.
Yeah. And
the problem is that the 4-year education isn't preparing people to come out of it prepared for a real job.
Absolutely not.
And so then they have to go to secondary. They have to go to graduate school. Well, high school was supposed to prepare most people for the real world, but it doesn't. So you go into college, and so it's this kind of cascading failure. And he's like, but you look at the way that school is designed. Our sit down, face forward, and be quiet model was designed in Prussia, not Germany, Prussia, in the late 1800s as a way to create obedient factory workers and soldiers.
Yep.
So it wasn't designed for the society that we live in now. So it needs to be restructured in order to continue, basically.
Yeah.
But yeah, like that whole come in, sit down, be quiet, and these are your peers because they happen to be the same age as you is a relatively new concept.
Yeah.
and so of course there's only so many striations and so many characters that are going to appear in that because every year you grow a little older and then you're gone, and it's the people coming behind you filling those same roles.
But it's all that identifying of who it is you want to be. You become those characters because of something that influenced you or something that pushed you that direction, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're a little gothy, right? Because you grew up with The Cure and stuff, and it's that brooding, nobody understands me thing, right? Which is what that's totally what the real metal scene was back in the day too. Same scenario, just wore lighter clothes. But it's that you gravitate.
I wanted to be a goth, but it was too hot here. So I ended up being a metalhead.
Yeah,
because it was just 100 degrees outside in the summer, wearing head to toe black. It just didn't work out.
Ooh, that'd be rough.
So I just couldn't do it.
Yeah. Uh-oh. Tear them up.
Nothing. Pop the headphone jack out of my phone.
But that whole relationship thing, and it all comes down just like in this movie. That one moment you're looking for, that one moment of coolness, which can turn everything around, right? So, and I guess that's another reason this movie stands out to me, because I relate to it because I'm a guy, right? And I've lived through some of these ideas. That shows you how warped my head is. So my other job that I had doing the shows at the schools, the Great Pretender shows, the reason that I loved that show so much, because it would take kids like me that were in school and give them a moment, that one moment where everybody looked at them and said, you know what? Yeah, they're pretty cool. Because I remember there's a lot of kids that are not the jocks or the well-known or the wealthy, and this is their chance to get on stage and do something creative and have people stand out there and clap for them. And when they do a good job, it's like, wow, I didn't know you had this ability. And it changes their outlook of school the rest of that time. And I've seen there was a kid that was so shy. He got up on stage and pantomimed the song, got backstage and passed out. That's how nervous he was of doing it. And I think like the next night, because they did 2 nights, a girl that was in the show asked him to prom. So there you go.
Oh, wow.
So here's a guy that never even talked to girls, and now he's getting asked to prom by this girl that would have never even considered it till
noticed him, maybe.
Yeah. So that hits me in the feels, because that's,
of course,
you grew up with this kind of mentality of, I mean, that's the reason Revenge of the Nerds and all these movies always stood out, because you relate to it.
Yeah, and like Revenge of the Nerds gets kind of these days it's very politically incorrect.
Oh yeah, yeah.
But it's right there in the name when it says revenge. Like
Right.
nobody ever said revenge was a nice thing.
Right.
Like these guys got picked on their whole lives, and they finally decided to take revenge.
Yep.
And then here 40 years later, people are like, well, it's kind of mean spirited. It's like, well.
And that's what this movie is, just from more of a teenage kind of perspective. I mean, to me, Weird Science and 1986 Trick or Treat is almost the same movie. It's just one goes funny, one goes not so funny.
Right. Well, and you're talking about that kind of defining moment of where you become cool. It's you always have that dream that kind of like little Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, where it's like I'm dumb, but now I've got all of this historical knowledge.
I'm going to save the world, dude.
Yeah, it's like all these different this kind of turning around moment. You're like, oh, you're kind of gothy. For me, dude, my whole life, because again, my dad's relationship with music to me always meant something.
Yeah.
Like I cared about the words. I cared about the lyrics.
Yep.
And then whenever a properly placed, riff or a bridge or a drum fill was hit, and it would give you goosebumps, So like music always meant more to me than I think it meant to a lot of other people around me. I feel like, oh, it's fun.
Sure.
And so like whenever there was songs or bands or whatever that had like, I don't really care too much about like party lyrics or just like kind of stupid.
Yeah.
But when it was like maybe pretentious or almost like making fun of things lyrics, so like I couldn't deal. I didn't like that kind of stuff, because to me it had to mean something, and I was basically like, oh, you're making fun of me, So, but yeah, dude. So like, you say The Cure, like I love when Adam Sandler was like, oh, I was listening to The Cure, and it's like so dark. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, them and if you go back and listen to Morrissey, the Smiths, I mean,
I love the Smiths, bro.
Some of the darkest lyrics ever, and it's like the happiest song on the planet.
Well, that was what's funny
Girlfriend
about
in a coma, yes, I know, It's serious. It's just like, what?
That was what's so crazy, like I said, because The Cure, most of the lyrics, I mean, on their more poppy, like starting to get more famous albums, their lyrics were kind of bleak on those early albums.
Yeah, they got the pop sense, so you kind of had to start watering it down.
But by the time they were like, hey, kiss me, kiss me, kiss me, and on like even The Head on the Door, whatever, it's all pretty much just songs about being in love.
Yep.
It's all pretty bright and kind of poppy with the dark overtone.
Yep.
The Smiths is just like bleak, but Johnny Marr was such a great pop guitar player.
Yeah.
It's hard to listen to Morrissey by himself because he doesn't have that foil.
Yeah.
He doesn't have that opposite pop sensibility. But yeah, for me, man, it was music. So I was like, that guy's cool. Like I liked the way that Rick Savage from Def Leppard looked. That long curly hair and playing the bass. Never wanted to be a bass player. Just wanted to look like that dude. And then Whitesnake, like that guy looks cool.
And then you saw Tony Catan on the car, and you're like, that's the job for me.
that right there.
Oh
yeah, man.
But yeah, man.
So for me,
go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, I didn't mind being a dork so much, but I wanted to be. So like I chose my role. Like I'm the music guy,
right?
Or not even the music guy. I'm just the long-haired weirdo.
What was weird for me is because we're talking about Weird Science, which I think is with Anthony Michael Hall. His role in this, he's basically been the nerd through all these other movies building up to this. Now he's the nerd that finally gets to the other side. And then you get the Johnny B. Good movie that came out a little later on. That was the name of the movie, yeah. And I'm like, I couldn't buy it. I couldn't buy him being the jock.
I couldn't buy it in Edward Scissorhands either.
Yeah.
I was like, it just doesn't seem right.
Yeah. So that was always hard.
He was a jerk, but he wasn't. He wasn't believable as a jock.
I can go back and watch it now and appreciate it more, but at that time, I was just like, yeah, It's the same problem I had with Tom Cruise back in the day. I was like, is this guy just gonna be able to do everything? you know, So it's funny how your mind just kind of thinks that way. It's like, I'm not interested in that because he's supposed to be a nerd.
Well, we can't talk too much more about Weird Science
I
without
agree.
the performance of a career.
Yeah.
Dude, he's first of all, if you were never a fan of Bill Paxton, you're wrong, because he was awesome in pretty much everything he was ever in.
You're right.
Even the slimy dude in True Lies was just like
Yep.
a perfect role for him, But Chet, dude.
The epitome, man. I mean, just, you hate that guy.
Dude, he's such a jerk. But then at the end, and that's one of those things whenever you start watching things, as an adult instead of a teenager, when he comes home and the house is wrecked, and he's just like, you can see like there's real concern in his face. He's like, it's snowing in his room and there's a missing. He's just like, something is terribly wrong. And he like goes and kisses, like, he's a jerk, but at the same time, he's still not like you understand why he's freaking out, because the house is destroyed and
yeah, man,
it's snowing in my room.
and instead of like overreacting because of all the craziness, he goes in and still beats them up. Instead of saying, I need to call, I don't know, fire department or something, nope, he's still going to go in there and say, why is it snowing in my room? There's a missile.
Well, he's got the shotgun and he starts dinging him on the head and wakes him up. And then the girlfriend wakes up and he bonks her on the head too, just cause.
It's just perfect, man. Just absolutely perfect. And again, that's just that craziness of that time period, man. And just making it fun. Yeah, awesome movie.
Hey, what's up, dudes? They're like, oh my god! She turns him into the frog. You assume it's a frog because he flicks his tongue out and eats a bug.
Yeah,
but you never can quite tell what exactly that thing is.
Yeah.
And it looks like everybody through the whole movie makes it out in one piece, except for maybe the piano chick that gets thrown out the chimney.
Through the chimney with no clothes on.
Yeah. She gets her piano stolen. She gets blown out the chimney with no clothes on and splashes in the lake. She doesn't get pulled back through the chimney whenever everything is back together. So.
Oh, that's a very good point. Oh, yeah, man. Classic movie. So if you haven't seen Weird Science, do yourself a favor. You got to check it out. It's a slice of 80s Americana, man.
And it is on right now. It's on HBO. Cool. HBO Go. So if you've got HBO Go or HBO Max, it's on for free.
Right.
Cool. Well, let's take a break real quick, and I will pencil in a little advertisement, and we'll be right back.
It's not a bad idea.
What?
Making a girl. Actually making a girl.
This is Wyatt and Gary.
I'd give her warm digis mammary glands.
Something's about to change their world. Something out of this world.
She's alive! Alive!
What would you little maniacs like to do first?
It's all in the name of science. Weird science.
If you want to be a party animal, you have to learn to live in the jungle.
Not us.
Not here.
No way.
She is turning their lives.
Trust me for once, will you?
What is going on?
Gary, I don't know. I don't know.
Their minds. And their house. Upside down.
It's seriously affecting your sex life.
It's completely unnatural.
Do you realize it's snowing in my room?
Totally unbelievable.
What's going on?
And definitely weird.
Hi, dudes.
They went from zeros to heroes in one fantastic weekend.
That's so good.
Universal Pictures presents a John Hughes film, Weird Science.
It's purely sexual.
And we're back.
Yeah.
I gotta keep remember. I liked having the movie trailers and the sound effects in there, but
Heck yeah.
we keep forgetting to put them in there because we just enjoy talking so much. So, got to make a point of whenever I come to a stopping point. I'm like, okay, let me write this down and let's get it happening. But the next movie we're going to talk about, do you want to introduce this one?
Oh yeah, man. I mean, to me,
this
this is if anything edges out Weird Science, it's Ferris Bueller's Day Off, man. I mean, you go from identifying with the nerds in Weird Science, but everybody wanted to be Ferris Bueller.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely the coolest guy.
Yeah.
The cool guy. But he's not pretentious in any way. He's just himself. Yeah. And you know, he really is just kind of skating by in life though.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
Skipped school 9 times.
9 times. Yeah, I mean, you know, it's that thing of, like you said, he's kind of everything rolled up into one. He's not arrogant. He's not the super nerd. He's a little bit. Everybody identifies with him, and that was always the key for me in school. I mean, I felt like I was kind of accepted by everybody. I was just kind of in the middle there. I was a little bit of all those things together. I wasn't near as cool as Ferris Bueller, but I thought that I was kind of looked at by the nerds and the preps and everybody as like, yeah, you know, he's pretty cool, you know, and that's all I could ask for. And Ferris Bueller was like the hero of that. It's like, man, this guy takes it to the nth degree where, you know, when they're even taking up, you know, funds for him for this fake operation or whatever they said he was going to have, and, you know, painted on the water tower, you know, save Ferris, you know. I mean, you know, that's
well,
just
that was
awesome.
well, and you said when he's the hero of everybody, you know, not to skip too far ahead, but whenever Jeannie's at the jail and she's complaining about, you know, how all this stuff, and he's like, you know, I got somebody you need to talk to. She's like, you say Ferris? He's like, you know him,
huh? What's funny is that scene right there is my wife's favorite part of the whole movie, because when she says her name and they go Shauna in the background, she loves that part, man. What's your name? Shauna. Shauna. Oh, yeah. And this movie moves just as fast and is just as crazy as Weird Science, but it's got a little more pizzazz to it, right?
It's a little more realistic. I mean, it's unrealistic, but it's all happens in the real world. There's no Frankenchicks and nuclear bombs in it.
But
yeah, you know,
you got Mia Sarah though. You got Mia Sarah.
Yeah.
And you got Cameron. Yeah. Who didn't want a friend like Cameron, right?
Well, that's what I'm saying. Is like it starts off, you're just like, you know, it's kind of unassuming. He's just, hey, why would we want to spend a day like this in school? So he just, you know, he's got his buddy that's a hypochondriac that, you know, comes over and like doesn't want to participate, but isn't going to say no because there's always going to be an adventure or something somewhere. And then they have to break the girlfriend out of school because he's got this perfect day that he just thinks we're going to have all this fun, but, you know,
he don't really have it planned out. It's just going to happen because life is good, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Which, you know, we've all had those days where you don't plan something and you just wing it and you're like, this was one of the coolest days ever.
Mm-hmm.
There you go.
Well, and two, you know, and then he explains how to fake sick. So he talks about like licking the palm and like, you know, doing all the stuff. So he's got it down to a science, you know, so he can fool his parents. So he's got a plan, you know, he's ready to not go to school. And then I love how like he's playing around in his backyard and like, you know, having orange juice and lemonade and stuff and just enjoying his morning. And then like they cut scenes to school and like all the kids are just bored out of their mind.
Ben Stein's your teacher. Why would you not?
the one girl's like spinning her gum, and like the one dude's falling asleep, and it's just like, and then it cuts back, and it's like got the I Dream of Jeannie music, and he's just kind of dancing around. It's like, my buddy of mine, I told you a couple weeks ago. So growing up, I had Jason Jordan and Jason Yeager.
Yeah.
So when I was in high school, my friend Jason Jordan, he had a pool, and we'd hang out at his pool all the time. But I had a job. And so when I was a senior in high school, I worked at Radio Shack. And it was an all right job. But, man, there were some summer days when it just was abysmal. Like, those hours could not move any quicker. And there's nothing worse when you're in a retail job, when you're standing there, like, riding the clock.
Yeah.
When some people come in, like buying batteries for a radio or buying a radio or a toy of some sort, and they smell like suntan lotion because they're going to go back out to the pool. And you're just like,
shoot me now.
I got to be here for another 6 hours. My friend, we just used to prank each other all the time, but he used to call the store. Like, boss would answer the phone, Radio Shack, thanks. That's for you. Pick up. It's like, hey, what's going on, man? This is Jason from the offices of You're Working and I'm Not. And then you hear him splash. I'm like, oh, you suck. God, why would you do that to me, man?
Right.
So, yeah, I know that feeling of just being like, I'm free. I'm not at work. It's so awesome. I'm not at school.
Oh, man. But, yeah, Ferris is tech savvy, for the time. So you got to appreciate that. The fact that he knows his plan so well, like when he calls into the school, he's not even sweating it,
Yeah.
Yeah, I need to talk to the principal and thank you. It's just like,
it's just waiting on hold and everything.
Yeah.
Well, and like that's what's funny too is because Rooney knows,
Yeah.
like from the very beginning, he's like, this is nope.
Right.
Like he's got two arch enemies. He's got his own sister and he's got the principal who knows he's up to no good. But everybody else believes him. Everybody, like they're fundraising because like, oh, if Ferris is sick, then But he planned it out before because he passed out at 31 flavors to make it everybody. So he had witnesses.
He's thought it through. So even though it looks like he's winging it, I mean, he's making it happen for himself. What's funny is I actually do have an Abe Froman t-shirt.
The Sausage
King of Chicago. And what's amazing is when I wear it, I mean, there's people that go, why do I know that name? And I'll say Ferris Bueller. And they go, oh yeah, Ferris Bueller. So there's just, again, with the John Hughes thing is those scenes, right, that just stay in your head. I mean, you got to talk about him breaking the fourth wall, right? Talking to the audience.
Oh, of course.
I mean, come on. Deadpool directly ripped it off. I mean, they even made a parody about it, right? That's how iconic it is.
Whenever he takes when he's in the shower,
yeah,
and he like covers
sprays
his own
down,
eyes.
Yeah, yeah, classic, man. And of course, that all goes back to Dobie Gillis. I mean, a lot of our age group, very few of us got to see some Dobie Gillis, but he was the one that started that kind of whole talking to the camera kind of thing. But that's a Ferris Bueller trait, 100%. And I don't know, man. It's almost like,
pardon my French.
Yeah,
like his camera doesn't want to come over, and he's just like.
Oh, Cameron getting in the car going, this is stupid. I'll go. And he gets out of his car and jumps around and kicks and he gets back in the car.
He's like, he'll keep calling me, because he knows there's no way.
He'll keep calling me.
Ferris is going to keep.
And I don't care what movie I see him in. I don't care how old he is. He's Cameron.
Of course. That was a defining role. Like, so good. He was on that one sitcom where he played like a mayor's assistant or something.
Spin City.
Like pretty, yeah. Like, it's Cameron.
Yeah, it's Cameron.
He's grown up Cameron,
yeah.
But it's still Cameron. He's got gray hair, but he's still Cameron.
Don't know his real name, don't care. He's Cameron.
Yep.
Oh.
And then Mr. Rooney, his secretary is she keeps losing pencils in her hair.
Oh,
and that was
man.
another thing that Hughes is good at, is those little sight gags that
Right.
just they're not plot advancing, but they just kind of build a character a little bit. Edie McClure was,
Yeah.
and she was one of those who was in a lot of movies at that
Oh,
time
yeah.
too.
Yeah, well, she came
And,
from the Pee Wee camp. I mean, she was in the original Pee Wee Herman show that came out, and yeah, so she's from that group. And man, I mean, you can't think of this movie and not think of her.
Yeah.
At some point,
I
I mean,
love-
when she answers the phone, she's like trying to do a deep voice. Oh.
I love it whenever she's like, it was such a small role, really. Well, it wasn't a small role, but Jeannie, like his sister, who's like really
Yeah.
a good, like, otherwise he's got no enemies. Like
Yeah.
Rooney's on his case, but Jeannie is out to get him,
Right.
you know. But whenever she walks in on the principals and she's like, oh, hey, Jeannie, well, who's bothering you now? Something not like that exact, like, you know, like, it's not just Ferris that gets on her nerves. She doesn't like anybody.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
and of course, then this movie introduced us to Ben Stein,
Oh yeah.
you know, and anytime anyone doesn't answer roll call, whether it's at a restaurant or in a work conference, there's, you know, it's like, hey, did Rick Morgan show up? Has anybody seen Rick? Somebody would be like, Bueller?
Bueller.
Because for that very reason.
Yep. And you gotta love the guys that are the parking attendants, right? The valet guys. They get in the car and take off in it. I can't tell
Yeah,
you,
they
man, the absolute joy I had in the theater seeing this for the first time when they jump and it's in slow mo and they're playing
And
the
those
Star Wars.
faces.
They're playing the Star Wars music and they're just smiling, big puppy dog smiles. Oh man, just perfection.
Like, because they had just spent like 10 minutes discussing how big of a deal this car is.
Right.
You know, like I broke my retainer that one time. You remember how pissed off he got? You know, this is a Ferrari. Like,
Yeah, I mean, just fantastic. And again, all your support group, everybody that's in here is just on top of the game. I love the scene where somebody sends the candygram or whatever to Ferris's house, and
Jenny opens the door. And
Yeah,
is like,
the
I heard
nurse.
that you were feeling ill. And she's just like standing there with her.
yeah, you can tell she's just mad as she could be, man.
Slams the door before she can get that final line out.
Oh man, it's just fantastic. And I mean, you know, the whole scene with the parade and him just jumping up and doing all that. I mean, it's all part of the escapades, I guess. But you know, it's more of the things you can relate to that just make it fun. I love the fact of it takes you places, right?
Mm-hmm.
Weird Science, you're in 2 or 3 locations, and that's pretty much the whole movie. Whereas here, every 10 minutes, you're in a different spot. You're either at the art gallery or the ball game, or, you know, they're just jumping around everywhere. And I just think that made it work so well. And, you know, the whole scene with the car, right? Because of my dad will kill me over the car and all the miles on it, and he's trying to run it off backwards. He needed Kurt Russell from Used Cars, so he could have fixed it.
Yeah, right. Get in there. Well, I was just thinking of like the different, like the almost getting caught, like when he runs into his dad at the restaurant,
Yeah.
or at the car, and so like they're all sitting there
Yeah.
together, and then the dad looks
Yeah.
back over, and it's just her, and she's making kissy faces.
Yeah.
He's just like, like they go out to get the cab, and then the dad comes out, so they all run, and then the dad turns around, and they all hop in, and
Yeah.
they drive away.
Yeah. It's all that by the skin of your teeth kind of thing, right? So close to getting caught, but never do, right? Always ends up on the right side. And, you know, everybody wants to be the lucky guy.
Dude, that scene where Mr. Rooney walks in on the video game player, and you know what he's talking about because he is he's been chasing Ferris the whole time.
Right.
But if you take that speech out of context,
Oh, yeah.
he tells that girl
Absolutely.
that is probably because she's not at school, so it's probably maybe a recent graduate or goes to a different school or whatever. But he walks up and tells her all this, like, I've been looking for you, and your ass is mine, and like grabs her. She's like,
yeah, brilliant, man, just brilliant. Yeah, John Hughes just nailed it with this one, and it will forever be my favorite John Hughes film. And there's so many that I love, but this one just takes it for me, man. And there'll never be a time when I wouldn't sit down and want to watch it.
yeah, that's one of those. It's been on here and there, and we're trying. I mean, I'm in that strange phase of children and bad words and things
Yeah.
that scare them, and
Sure.
you know their ability to be interested in things and stuff like that. So, like, is this something that's going to entertain my kid, or is it something that she's going to get confused and bored and just like be bugging us while we're trying to watch it? But there's a whole big list of stuff that's
Yeah.
coming soon.
Yeah, you
So
you test the waters, right, and you just keep building upon it. So, yeah, these stand the test of time, man. I mean, they're a time capsule. You kind of want your kids to see these and say, "Yeah, this was the big thing," right? So
yeah, that's for sure. Well, and that's like I said, because with Hughes movies coming out 2 or 3, sometimes 4 in a year,
yeah,
and some of them are they're icons of Americana.
yeah,
Because we didn't mention at the beginning, because again we're almost done with this episode, and we're only talking about 2, and probably could keep on going for a while.
yeah,
But the Vacation, European Vacation, and Christmas Vacation,
oh yeah,
like that series,
Yeah.
written and directed,
Yeah.
John Hughes.
absolutely,
Like, and all 3 of those movies are perfect.
Yep.
Like and I loved European Vacation a whole lot for a whole lot of good reasons. But we mentioned 16 Candles, Breakfast Club, Pretty in Pink. Like all 3 of those are just But again, when you start pulling out your favorites, and you're like, okay, so what are the ones that the best one-liners, the ones that
Yeah.
I just keep going back to when you mentioned, like, oh, hey, we need to talk about John Hughes. It's like, all right, well, I know we got to talk about Weird Science for sure.
yeah,
for sure, because to me that is like the defining.
yep,
And then, yeah, I mean, there's really no comparison to Ferris Bueller. Ferris Bueller itself is pretty
it's
spot on perfect. Like,
Yeah.
there's no it's fun all the way through.
Yeah.
And I
yeah.
spent a lot of time
Both of them-
wishing I could be Ferris.
Sure, they're both fantastic, and again, you talk about just the spectrum of these movies. I mean, you're not even getting to Planes, Trains, Automobiles, Uncle Buck,
All the John Candy stuff.
Yeah, I mean, God, John Hughes. Come on, you probably don't realize how many movies he did make unless you're just a big John Hughes fan. But if you just look up and you're like, holy crap, this guy did all these? Yeah, he pretty much did your 80s childhood.
The 80s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, fantastic, man.
And he did a whole bunch of ghostwriting too.
Yeah.
He did a whole bunch of movies that were uncredited for one reason or another. Like, he wrote this movie, but he didn't.
Yeah.
He
He
went
didn't-
under a pen name or
He
whatever.
didn't have time to finish that when he was doing 3 at the same time.
Yeah. So, pretty awesome guy.
Yeah.
But man, we are like kind of right up against the end. So do
Yeah.
we have any final thoughts other than go see these movies, watch these movies,
Yep.
enjoy them, because they're awesome.
Yep, they're iconic. So let us know if you're fans of these 2 particular movies, or hey, what's your favorite of John Hughes's films? I mean, what's the ones that just are your go-to? Because that's what these movies are. They're go-to movies. There's never these movies and they're not in somebody's top 10 of some sort. They're always in them. So what's your favorites that are out there? And that'd be curious. I'm curious to see what that ends up being.
I would too. Well, I mean, everybody's got a different thing, because I was going to say, like, I think a lot of people would probably put Breakfast Club up
Sure.
there in the top top couple, because
Yep.
Breakfast Club 2, and that could be a whole show just because that's a whole one-liners sort of movie. One of my favorite lines from that entire movie is, screws fall out. The world's an imperfect place. Like, it's actually kind of deep, but like, it was for them, they just wanted that door shut.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, there's so many things you can take away from any of them, like Long Duck Dong. So I'm sure we'll get into all that, and we get to see a young John Cusack grow out of all this too. So
Sure.
I think it'd be fun to revisit the Hughes films and just pick a couple at a time and keep chugging along at this, because these are fun, iconic films. So yeah, like I said, let us know what's the ones that made the impact on you, your go-to John Hughes films. I think that'd be a lot of fun to get some feedback on.
I agree. Well, cool. Hit us up on Facebook at What's Awesome, and then use the same What's Awesome tag to find us on all the other things.
Yep, Twitter,
We're there.
Instagram, YouTube. We there.
We're probably most active on Facebook because that's where we were talking to the people who were talking to us.
Yeah.
So come and join in the conversation, and if you got a show suggestion, let us know.
Yeah, everybody's
And
welcome.
So, cool. Until next time, man, keep it awesome.